Hey GED students, I want to talk a little bit about estimating with fractions. You know, I have all these students who spend months and months of time learning to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions and memorizing all the steps. And then they get their steps all mushed up and they give me really ridiculous answers. And, you know, if you didn't even if you like totally forgot how to do fractions, you ought to be able to give me a decent estimate so you would know when you had a ridiculous answer. Let me talk a little bit about estimating. What does estimating mean? When we estimate, we use nice round numbers that are easier to do math with. For example, when you go to the grocery store, you know, some of us keep a running tally in our head to see if we have enough money for what we're buying. But if I see something on the shelf marked at $11.79, I'm not likely to try to add, you know, $11.79 plus $4.23 plus $2.99 and so on and so forth, and keep adding up all those tricky decimal numbers. You know, easy to make a mistake. That's a lot of numbers to carry around in my head. We tend to just estimate. We say, well, $11.79 is pretty close to $12. $4.23 is about $4, and $2.99 is about $3. And so right here, I'm looking at about 16, 17, about $19, you know, and we kind of keep a running tally like that, estimating. Well, you can do the same thing with fractions. So I want to talk about how we estimate with our numbers. Usually when we round numbers, what we do is we ask ourselves the question, are we halfway there yet? So of course, if we were talking about halfway to $1, that would be 50 cents. Half of $1 is 50 cents. So, you know, I chose to round $11.79 up to $12 because I had more than 50 cents. I chose to round $4.23 down to $4 because I had less than 50 cents. I wasn't really halfway there yet. I wasn't very close to 5. And then I chose to round $2.99 up to 3 because, again, I was really close to 3. I had more than 50 cents. I was more than halfway there. And that's how we've always rounded. So students don't always recognize that. They memorize these rules like 5 or higher. When it's 5 or higher, we'll round up. Like, for example, if I was told to round to the hundreds place in this problem, looking at the hundreds place, I would take a look at the next number, the one I was about to throw away, and I would ask myself 5 or higher. But why do I ask myself that question? Well, 5 is halfway through our digit system. We have digits 0 through 9 in our number system. So 0 through 4 are the first 5 digits, and 5 through 9 are the last 5 digits. So this, if I was here, I'm less than halfway. And if I'm there in my digit system, I'm more than halfway. So this is what's always worked for us with decimals. We just look for the number 5 because we know halfway with decimals. It's not so easy to recognize halfway with fractions, and that's the skill we need. And so in order to think about it, I want to bust out a number line. Let us consider all the numbers between 0 and 1. And people say to me all the time, Kate, there are no numbers between 0 and 1. And I say, you lie. You're a liar. There's lots and lots and lots of numbers between 0 and 1, but they're all pieces and parts. They're not a whole thing yet. So they would either have to be represented as decimals or fractions. And we're talking about fractions. Now, the point where I would round up is from the halfway point on. This is round up. And the point where I would round down is if I was at less than halfway. I would round down, okay? So that's the point. We round up when we're more than halfway to a number. We round down when we're less than halfway to the next number. So now, this messes with students because they're like, yeah, but Kate, not all fractions are in terms of half. So let's look at this and talk about this for a second. So I'm got to give myself some more space. I talk more than I thought I would as usual. So let's bust out that number line one more time. And I hope you agree with me that there's 0 and there's 1 and there's halfway. between 0 and 1. But how does that translate into other fractions? Well, let's think about any other fraction. Let's think about fourths. So fourths is breaking a number line into 4 equal pieces. So I'm just going to erase this tick mark here. I'm going to pull out a new color for my fourths. Let's look at it in blue. And fourths is breaking this number line into 4 equal pieces. So yeah, it would get halved, but then it would get halved again. And you can see now I have 4 equal pieces. So we have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And look at this, equivalent fractions are coming up. Of course, 2 out of 4. Remember, you can read your fraction bar as out of. 2 out of 4 is half of a group. Like if I had a group of 4, and I cut it in half, I'd have 2 out of 4. And so that's the halfway point with fourths. And in fact, that method works with anything. Let's imagine if we had tenths. If I had tenths, I'm breaking each whole thing into 10 equal pieces. I don't want to do it on my number line up here because it's going to get messy. But if I were to break that in half, 5 out of 10 is half. Okay, so let's use this skill for rounding now. And then estimating. Rounding is a part of estimating. Okay, so take a look at this number. Now, number 1 says 5 1/3 plus 3 4/5. Now, if you're unlucky, one of these problems might come up on the GED where you don't have multiple choice and you don't have a calculator. But the likelihood is if you have a computation problem like this, you will have multiple choice or you will have a calculator. And it really, really, really helps to know what a sensible answer looks like. Even if you're just doing the problem yourself, students will give me weird answers. They'll tell me, oh, this is equal to 11.5. And I'm going, what? 11.5? That doesn't even make sense. I haven't done the math and that doesn't make sense. And why am I able to say that? Because I know how to estimate. Let me show you what I mean. Let's start with 5 1/3. So my question is, am I more than halfway to 6 yet? 5 1/3 is somewhere between 5 and 6, but where between? Is it closer to 5 or is it closer to 6? And the way to figure that out is to ask yourself, is 1/3 more or less than a half? Well, think about it. If you have 3 pieces and you only take one of them, did you take more or less than a half? You took less than a half. So this 1/3 is less than half, not really big enough to matter, so I'll just call this 5. I'm estimating. Same thing with 3 4/5. Let's think about this. 3 4/5 is somewhere between 3 and 4. But am I halfway there yet? Am I halfway to 4? Should I call it 4? Should I call it 3? Well, let's think about it. If you had 5 items, fifths, and you had 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 5. Do you have more or less than a half? Well, obviously you have more than half of that group there. And so we're going to round this sucker up to 4 because we have more than a half. We'll round up the whole number to 4. And 5 plus 4 is 9. My answer should be somewhere around 9. Now, what might be a high 8, it might be a low 9 fraction, but it's still going to be somewhere around 9. If you get 11.5, you're way off. And so this ability to estimate fractions is going to come in handy for you. Let's look at the next problem. Same thing. So 9/10 is pure fraction. So this one's a little trickier because I wouldn't want to round down to 0 because 0 would make everything go away. But 9/10, if you think about it, is almost one whole thing. I mean, if I have 10 things, and I could draw my little circles, or I can cut up a pie into 10 pieces. It doesn't matter. But if I have 9 out of 10 things, I'm so close to a whole. This number is so close to 1. And that is timesing by this. Is this closer to 2 or is this closer to 3? Well, as we already said, if you only have 1 out of 3 pieces, you're not halfway there yet, so we'll just call that 2. We won't round up. And 1 times 2 is about 2. So whatever answer I should get out of here, it should be around 2. It won't be perfectly exactly 2 because I'm estimating, but it'll be close to 2. Let's look at the next example. Okay, so 5 and 5, 6. So would I call this 5 or would I call this 6? Well, if I have 5 out of 6 pieces, I'm definitely more than halfway there. This is more than half, and so I'll round that number up to 6. And that's to be divided by, if I have 1 out of 5 pieces, 1 out of 5 pieces, I'm definitely nowhere near halfway, so I'm just going to ignore that fraction and pretend like this problem 6 divided by 2, which says it's about 3. Whatever I get when I do this problem, I should get somewhere around 3. If I don't, I've screwed things up. Okay, one last problem here. 6 and 2 11ths. Well, 2 out of 11. Imagine you had 11 things, 11 total pieces, but out of those 11 pieces, you only have 2 of them. Do you have half? No, you have much less than half. We're going to call that too small to matter, so we'll round down to 6. And then 4 and 4/7. That one's a little trickier. Again, asking myself, am I closer to 4 or closer to 5? Well, if there's 7 things, and I've got 4 of them, I'm just over half, big enough to round up. I'll call that 5. 6 minus 5 is 1. I'm expecting an answer of about 1. Again, not perfectly 1 because I've rounded here, but about 1. And so this kind of estimation can help you, especially with the multiple choice problems you're likely to see on the GED, or just to check your work, because sometimes you guys get your steps for fractions all in a muddle. Okay, I hope this video makes sense to you. If you have any questions about it, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll be happy to clear things up.